Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me, hello, my name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So I hope that's why you're here, because that's what's going to be happening. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in and the continued support. Today for you, as you can see in the title, I have a book review for you. I will be reviewing A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This is the first installment in the Mirror Visitors Quartet. This whole quartet was originally written in French and translated by Hildegard Searle. All 4 installments are currently out and translated, so you can totally marathon this if you'd like. And this is 490 pages of just YA fantasy excellence. I love this book. I thought it was fantastic. I gave it a 4 on Goodreads, and I've got quite a lot to say about it, so grab yourself a drink and let's get started. So, hopefully that will stay. So, what drew me to this book? Back in February, I was taking part in a readathon, and the readathon was called the Polarathon, and there were prompts such as a cold word, foiling on the cover, polar fantasy. So I didn't own any of these. So I went to Barnes & Noble to find some books that would meet some of these prompts, and lo and behold, I stumbled across this gem of a book. Winter, foiled cover, polar fantasy. It hit all the points. So I thought it was fantastic. And I picked it up. And I'm not ashamed if that's the reason why I picked this book up, because I lucked out. I really enjoyed this book. This book follows our protagonist, Ophelia, who is a young girl on the arc of Anemea. And she's what we call an animist. So she can hold an object and read the history of that object and anybody who's encountered that object at the time of possessing said object. How many times did I just say object in one sentence? Was anybody counting? I wasn't. But anyway, that's what her main power is. And one of the cool things about her. But she can also do this really cool thing where she walks through mirrors, which is just this really cool thing that she can do. But this book follows her and her story of basically what I would call forced boredom and survival. And when I get into breaking down and talk about the story, you'll understand why I say this. But it's just her story. Now, this is the first installment, so there is action, there is plot to the story, but a lot of this book is the world building, the setting up of the layers, meeting the characters, kind of figuring out who's connected to who, and just kind of getting a little taste of all the political machinations that are going throughout the book. So that's where we are with this book. But for a first installment, there was enough action, there was enough romance, there was enough world building, there was enough character development that I was happy. I gave this a strong 4. I wanted this book to be a 5, but it didn't hit it right there, but we'll get into that. But how about we start out with what worked about this book? So lots of stuff worked with this book. One, it's world building. Like I said, this is the first installment, so we are getting introduced to this world. We are learning that at one point in time, the world was a single unit and it was smashed into all these little pieces that we now call arcs, and every arc has its own special kind of ability. It has an ancestral spirit that imbues powers to its residents or to its family members, because everybody's kind of interrelated on each arc. Little incestuous, had a little bit of a problem with that part, but you know what? It's fantasy. You just learn to live with it. But the description that I was given of the world and how it was broken down and how it worked was right on point. It was just enough for me to understand, but it wasn't enough that I felt like there wasn't more to explain. There wasn't more to flesh out later on. It gave me good questions, but they weren't questions that I necessarily needed to have answered right then and there, because those answers weren't going to progress the plot anymore. The answers I did get about the world progressed the plot. So I thought her balance of world building with plot was really, really good. Her description of the world was not so drowning in lyrical prose that it became exhausting to read and I couldn't breathe. It was just enough. It was written beautifully, translated beautifully. It flowed really nicely. I really enjoyed the world, and I got a kick of how this thing worked out, because not only did she build the world in specific kind of units, she gave the characters on these arcs that she has created, these smashed pieces of this broken world, characteristics of the world that they were on. And I thought that was fantastic. You know, she was really playing with the idea that your surroundings dictate kind of how your personality is. And Animea, I don't want to say they're super fun loving because we don't spend a lot of time on Animea, but the little bit of time we have, you know, they're kind of cozy, and you know, they're just kind of chill and laid back. And then when we go to Pole, the arc of Pole, where Ophelia has to go for reasons that I will talk about later, she finds that this arc is just cold and mean and jagged, and the people are cold and mean and jagged. But at the same time, if you've ever been in a snowstorm, things look kind of almost mirage-like. Well, this Pole is just, this arc, I'm sorry, it's called Pole. Pole is just the same. It's not exactly what it seems. It looks like one thing, but it's completely different. And it was really unique how she utilized the world to help emphasize the story with the characters and the plots and everything like that. I thought she did a really, really good job on it. Another main thing that worked in this book was the magic system that she created. She had a kick-ass magic system. The powers that she was giving her characters were really unique. I mean, one of them, Ophelia, can walk through mirrors. I'm sorry. It just, as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought of the show Quantum Leap, when he walks through the little goobly goops. I loved it. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, turns into kind of like water as she walks through it, and she can only put part of herself through it, and then she get part of it out. And I just thought it was a really unique concept, a really unique way of traveling. And I was really excited to figure out how it was going to get used later on in the book. Another power, the object reading. Being a history major, it's not a power, but when you hold something that actually was part of history, like hold something that was on the bottom of the sea with Titanic, it's, unless you do it, you don't really understand that feeling of like awe and just like bigger than you kind of concept. And it's fantastic. So the fact that my main character has this and she uses it, I just thought that was fantastic. I could totally relate to Ophelia because of that. And I really, really enjoyed that magic system, because even though it is not actually magic, I like to think that it is, because it's awesome. It's a great thing to have. There was also, on the Pole, they had some unique powers as well. They weren't always the best powers, but we had the inflicting pain without touching. Very reminiscent of Twilight, we know, but it was still a really cool concept that this family line had this power, and then there were the people who could create a mirage and make it seamless. So this jagged, cold, mean world could be beautiful, and springtime always, and nice sunny weather, and just the epitome of perfect, when really it's all fake. Kind of like the Matrix. It's very much like the Matrix. And then there was transparency gifts. There was a gift that could remove magical abilities. It was just all over the place with the magical talents, but the way she had them designed is only certain families had this, not even magic, it was like a genetic ability to do. And I thought that was a really, really unique concept, that she made the magic genetic, but it was only a specific type of magic that could work. And only certain people could receive the magic based off of how much of the gene they got, if they were half, if they were full, if they grew through, if they lost it during puberty. It was really unique how she layered these magic systems on, and it was just fantastic. I thought it was great. And they were described in enough detail that I understood the concept, how they worked, kind of how they were passed down. I got to see a little bit of them in action, but not so much that it was like, this is going to be a big fucking deal. This really isn't going to be a big deal. Her proportions were fantastic. Another item was her character work. Every single character had multiple facets and multiple faces. I just said the same things. You saw arcs for the characters very, very quickly on. They did not get pigeonholed very quickly. Thought they were going to. when I was reading this book originally, I was thinking, okay, so I've got my romantic interest, I've got my kind of villain guy here, I got my two-faced guy here, I got the guy I can't trust, and then in the middle of the book, she decided to turn all that shit on its head and say, fuck that, we're gonna do what I want. And I'm gonna give them all these other different character arcs, but the character arc wasn't so off-putting that it wasn't believable. All of the arcs and the change in the characters were all believable sides to these characters because they still retain that kind of main quality that kind of designated them, which was kind of that family identity that all these different families on the arc of Pole have. You spend majority of this book on the arc of Pole. So when I talk about the environment, I'm talking about the Pole arc. The characters are definitely progressing the story. The world is helping develop the story, but the characters are progressing through the world and utilizing the world as they see fit. It was fantastic. They went from her little palace over here with Thorn into like this, what looks to be like a royal court, and you get to see how the world just changes up and down like this, and then it kind of goes like this, and then it kind of turns like this, and then it's a big, huge jagged edge. Like it's very smooth and fluid, and then it's just like off a cliff. And it was fantastic. The best progression I thought was Thorn's, which is our male lead. Thorn is the treasurer of the Ark of Pole, and Ophelia is contracted to marry him kind of as a political alliance. And when she goes over to the Ark of Pole, she learns very quickly that people over there are mean and cold and not to be trusted. You can't really trust anybody, hence why I said the multifaceted faces. You think you're gonna trust this person, and then you're just like, never mind. You're kind of a douche. And Thorn is just like that, except the thing with Thorn is you think you're going to get this, because all these other characters, you kind of get this change in them, but Thorn's change is the only one that is really minute, and you really have to look for it. And in all honesty, it might not even be changing. You might just be wanting it. Like, she wrote him in such a way, and his scenes in the book are written in such a way that you think you're seeing some progression, but it's so minute and so slow moving that you are literally second guessing your own gut instinct of like, is he really developing feelings for her? Or, okay. Because then he does something, you're like, but you just, no. I loved his progression. I loved his story arc because, yes, it was very, very slow and very, very painful, but I feel like that is going to be something special. I don't know if it is, because I haven't read the rest of the installments, but I'm really hoping that that is going to be something special. And the other characters they're not as, like, digging in like that, but Ophelia's definitely very noticeable, and some of the other members are very sus in the world. You want to trust them, but you have already learned from this book very quickly that you can't really trust anybody, and so you're a little apprehensive about doing it, but you still want to. It's excellent. Her character work was spot on. I really, really enjoyed it a lot. I have my notes here. So another thing that worked about this was how she progressed the story. Like I said, she progressed it through the characters, but utilized the world to help push it forward. When you learned about my revelations, I like this word, I say it a lot. The revelations in the story where you start to actually figure out what's going on. Oh my God, they're awesome. They're so good. They're so good because you're just like, what? I did not see that coming. You're a bad guy? You're a good guy? Whoa. And then you start looking at what you've already seen and you see, well, why didn't I see that in the first place? Why did I not see that? She hides She hides her revelations within the context and then blatantly gives it to you. And you feel kind of like a dumbass because you didn't catch on. And you're just like, oh, no. I think I did that probably like 12 times during this book. This auditory, oh my God, no. Really? Threw me. I love books that do that. I do. Her character encounters, some of the encounters she has with the characters, especially Ophelia and Thorn. Okay, Ophelia's our main protagonist, and then you have Thorn, who is like the love interest, and they're not really together a lot. Like, they're in the same vicinity, but they're not talking to each other, and that alone speaks volumes to this romance, sort of not romance thing, and it's fantastic. And you see her have encounters with Thorn's aunt and other members of the Ark of Pole Society, and just kind of the way they manipulate words. And some you think she's falling for, some you think, she's not. And then these just really weird characters that you don't think are going to have any bearing on the story whatsoever, and they have all the bearing on the story. And then you have this overarching political intrigue that Thorn is literally hated by everyone on his pole. Everybody hates him, except his aunt. So, guilty by association. She's contracted to marry Thorn, so therefore, when she gets to pole, she realizes that everybody hates my guts and I have to pretend I don't exist. So half the book, she literally doesn't exist. She is somebody else. And it's awesome. It's so cool what Christelle Davos does with this kind of invisible character aspect of her. And it's fantastic. I just loved it. The last thing I think really worked was this romance. It is so slow. I mean, it is slow. We have no idea, at least I don't, if this romance is even going to happen. Like, I feel like this. Either A, it is going to be so slow that when it finally culminates, I'm not going to give a shit about it because it went that slow. B, it's just going to be the right amount of slow that when I finally get that resolution, be like, yes, so worth the wait. Or C, I am seeing a romance where there wasn't a romance written because I just really want a romance. Like, it is that minuscule. The encounters with Ophelia and Thorn are so... They're poignant moments, but they are so far and few. They're so far and few in between that I'm just like, are we doing this? Are we not? I'm not quite for sure. And then this big revelation happens at the end, and I'm still hoping that there's a romance, but now I'm wondering, did she just write this to fool me? Like, is she making me feel like one of the characters? Like, I'm under this kind of mirage sort of thing? Like, none of this was real? What? Ugh. So, I like how she played with it and how she utilized it, because sometimes you don't need romance slapped in the face. Sometimes that little bit of trickle is all you need to get through, and I think she hit the nail on the head on it. But there were things about this book that didn't work either. So let's talk about those. One, this book is translated originally from French. So I did not read the French. I read the the English translation. And I know from taking French in college that some things just don't translate well. I can't tell you what doesn't translate well because I didn't read the original French. But there are points in this book where the phrasing, like how the characters say things, they sound kind of weird, and you have to kind of reread a few times because it is literally translated. It's not translated to flow like we would say something, especially like catchphrases and things like that. They're just not said the same way. And that is just a language thing. It's easily overcome. It's not that often in the book, but there are times where I have an idea of what they were trying to say, but it didn't translate correctly for me. I'm 100% sure the words are correct and everything, but it's more of a direct translation than a figurative translation where they want to say this, but they say this. It means the same thing, but this is very literal of it. So there are parts of the book where that kind of makes it a little funky, and some of it is on dialogue. It's not just on description, so it is dialogue. So I think some of the dialogue parts I had to reread a few times just to be like, okay, I think this is a translation issue, but I get it. I get what's happening here. The character traits. There are some traits that she gives her characters that some people would have problems with. Main one is Ophelia. Ophelia is a young girl. She is contracted to marry Thorn, and in a political kind of alliance between the two arcs, and everybody hates Thorn, so therefore she has to kind of pretend she's not there and has to go into hiding. So she gets really, really fucking bored and decides to kind of go out and explore. And in some of these explorations, you find out, hey, she's not as naive as I think she is. And then there's other times where she meets up with certain people and you think, wow, you are extremely naive if you actually think that means I love you. So, some of the character traits that she gave some of her characters, specifically Ophelia, could get kind of grating, but it is YA. So you have to take that into effect that this is a YA fantasy. So you're reading about young adults. We do stupid things. Or I'm not really a young adult anymore. I'm 34. I don't really consider myself a young adult anymore. Maybe I am. I don't exactly know what the cutoff is. But you know, I remember when I was in my early 20s and teenage years, I did stupid things. I interpreted things incorrectly than what I would do now. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, for sure. The connections with the characters, they are, well, they're not what they seem. A lot of this book is not what it seems. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And once you figure that out, that gets kind of annoying because sometimes you don't always want to have to interpret. You rather just have the author tell you. Some people are like that, some people aren't, but it's 6 one, half dozen the other, you know. And I found that sometimes some of the connections that I had with characters was just kind of like, there's no way you have this deep of connection already. There's no way. None. You do not trust this person that freaking much. Or how can you trust this person solely and nobody else? Are you kidding me? Like, just kind of stupid young person behavior traits, which completely work for the age range that she wrote the book in, for the genre that she wrote the book in. It makes sense. It works. They're standard kind of tropes, but people might have an issue with them. The utilization of the magic. The magic system is fantastic in this book. Awesome magic concepts, magic abilities, how it's passed down, great, fantastic. She doesn't use it enough. All right? She doesn't use the magic abilities enough. This chick can walk through mirrors, and she literally walks through like 3 mirrors. That's it. She can walk through mirrors, people, and she only walks through a mirror to escape boredom and to go see Thorn once. Like, it's not utilized to its best ability. I'm feeling like this should have been, it's called the Mirror Visitor Quartet. Like, I feel like this should be used a lot more than what it is. But later on in the book, you find out kind of what their plan is. And I think in later installments, it's going to get used more. Same with her animist ability. I feel like her powers are going to get utilized a hell of a lot more. So I'm not super pissed off about it. But before I knew that, I was like, you got some really cool last powers and you're not fucking using them. And some of the powers that they used, when she used them before they were described, which was really cool, but it threw me for a loop at first. And I felt like I was in the labyrinth when she just automatically, you know, when Sarah is walking, all of a sudden she's in the masquerade ball and just kind of like transitions from that. And you're like, where the hell did this come from? all of a sudden she turns around and she's in this beautiful pink dress, and David Bowie looks fucking fantastic singing, you know, that beautiful song. I can't remember the title of the song right now. I will link it down below if you like. And she looks stunning, and it's a complete mirage, but you don't realize that. And it's kind of like how this book was at certain points. I was like, oh, I'm doing something now. Oh, this is a power. Shit. I didn't see this one coming. It's so trippy. The book is trippy, okay? It's trippy. The romance. People can have a problem with the romance because it is so effing slow. And Thorn's kind of a douche. Kind of a dominating ass. So if you're really not into that, you're not going to like him. Just a heads up. I can see why people would have a problem with the world building because it is a very intricate world building system. There's a lot of layers to it, and it is still going. We have not encountered in this installment enough of the world to really know what it's capable of. We know enough to be able to get through the book, but there is an illusion that there is a lot more to it, and maybe knowing just a little bit more would have worked for some people. For me, the world building was great, but for some people, I could see them needing just a little bit more to feel more comfortable with how everything's working and going in the story. So, highlights. Unique magic systems. She can hold objects and read the history of them. I mean, that's fucking cool as shit. I've never read a book where that's the power. I love that. Mirror travel. I would love to walk through mirrors. I think that'd be awesome. I really want to know what it feels like to walk through a mirror. Does it feel liquidy? Does it feel like solid? Like, what does it feel like? Political intrigue. Lots of political intrigue. I didn't really touch on a lot of the political things because I didn't want to spoil a lot of the major moments in this book, but there is a lot of political intrigue. If you like political fantasies, you will like this book because it is all politics. Majority of the action is political, discussion-based, and, you know, little promises here, promises there, little backstabby here, backstabby action here. Yeah, it's fantastic. Great. Twists and revelations. The timing of them, fantastic. Twists that you don't see coming, revelations that you do see coming, but you were told about it way earlier, so then you feel like an idiot when you get it. And I personally don't mind feeling like an idiot at that point in time because I'm like, oh, I should have seen that. It's like when you see the movie with a really good twist, you're like, I should have seen that. Why didn't I see it? And then you go back and try to figure it all out. Love those. Lots of those. Fantastic. If you like slow burn romances, this romance will, oh, it burns so slow. So slow. So slow. But if you like it, you're going to love it. And the last highlight is Ophelia's arc, which you really see at the end of the book. Ophelia's character goes through some shit in this book. Even though it's just the first installment, she goes through some shit. And just the stuff she goes through at the very end, that moment where she's just like, fuck this place, I'm over it. And she does her thing, and it's awesome. It is great. And it sets up the next book, I think, awesome. After I read that, I was hooked. I was down. I was already down for book 2, basically in the middle of this book, but that last moment sealed it for me. I was like, yep, put that thing in my cart. I'm buying it. Let's go. I need it right now. This is awesome. I originally, when I first started reading this book, was giving it like a soft 4. By the end, this thing was a hard 4. I couldn't get it to a 5, though. That romance was just a smidge too slow. And I really want to know if it's even going to happen. Like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And that just, it unnerves me. I want it to happen, but I don't want to, like, see something that's not actually there. So I don't want to be that person, you know? So, yeah, that's what I got. So that's my review of A Winter's Promise, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys will check it out. If you got this far in the video, leave me a little snowflake emoji because it's a nice polar fantasy. And if you decide to read this book, let me know. I would love to know other people's thoughts on it. I know I saw a lot of mixed reviews on this book. I've seen some that like are fantastic and others that are just like, this book fucking sucks. Let me know if you read the book, what you thought. Get a conversation going. I'd love to talk to you about it. But that's what I got for you guys today, and I will see you guys all soon with another video. Bye.